Welcome to the Yoga Therapy Hour. My name is Amy Wheeler. I'm your host today. And I have met a new friend today. Her name is Naomi Finkelstein. And Naomi introduced me to something very different today, something that I don't know I've ever heard before. And, in yoga, I think we've seen a big shift. We've seen that in the 90s and the early 2000s, almost everyone that was doing yoga was basically trying to be thin. A lot of people were using yoga as a way to over-exercise and become thin. We saw a lot of people with disordered eating and eating disorders coming to yoga. And it was almost the norm back then that, you know, we were being told you have to look a certain way to be a yoga person. And then, of course, over the last several years, we have seen the body positive movement come in. But in my mind, the body positive movement was out there. It was like, you should run your studio this way. You should talk to people that way. You should not have judgments about this. You should keep your mouth shut. Like there was a lot of rules out there. It kind of reminds me of similar to trauma-informed yoga, where there's a lot of things that are common sense that we should do to give people dignity and be kind to them and treat them as whole, healthy, wonderful human beings. But in some ways, it can also feel like a list. You have to do A, you have to do B, you have to do C. So in my mind, going into this interview, I was kind of thinking we're going to get this list about all the different ways we need to reform our thinking and our words and our ways of being so that we're in alignment with the body positive movement. That's not what happened in this interview. It was personal, it was deep, it was organic from the inside of Naomi coming out. I went into a freeze state. You'll see there's a point where I'm like, whoa, I can't even think right now. And I am feeling disembodied. So I'm going to have to listen to this interview just like you, just to see how it turns out in the end. And if there was value here, I'm certain there was, because Naomi is so wonderful and lovely. But I also want to tell you, if you've had some body issues, you might need to slow down to listen to this. You might need to lie in bed, replay it, go for a walk, discharge any sympathetic nervous system activity that arises. You might need to listen to it in parts and really try to figure out what is truly being talked about here, because it's not a set of rules. It's not a way to act out there in yoga studio land. It's really an internal, deep shift towards, it's going to sound cliche, but self-love, revolutionary self-love. And I don't even like to give that little tip because you're already thinking, oh, I know what revolutionary self-love is. No, you listen to Naomi right now and you will hear revolutionary self-love. All right, let's go meet Naomi Finkelstein. Welcome to the Yoga Therapy Hour Season 9. When I had this idea about a year ago that we could take an entire year for all of you to come on the podcast and tell your stories, I had no idea how overwhelming the response would be and how amazing it would be to get to know so many of you, our faithful listeners. I've gotten to know friends and see faces and connect with hearts. So many people that I didn't even know were out there. People just like you and I. I'm so grateful. And the response has been so large that I can't take any more stories for the rest of the year. There's many weeks where I have 2 podcasts every Thursday scheduled for recording to try to respond to this wonderful thing of having so many people willing to share. So we're no longer needing anyone to sign up for telling your story. If you really feel strongly, I could put you on a waiting list in case someone cancels. And I want to thank all the people who came forward to make this year on the Yoga Therapy Hour so successful. I'm so grateful to you. All right, let's go meet our guest for today and hear another story. Welcome, Naomi. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here.
Naomi, where in the world are you located right now?
I am in Chicago, Chicago.
Okay.
Yeah, looking out at Lake Michigan from my seat here.
Oh, nice. I lived in Chicago during my graduate school program, and I
Mm,
lived in Presidential Towers downtown.
okay.
Back then, that was like the ghetto. It was really
Uh,
safe. And I went to UIC.
gotcha. Nice.
How long have you been in Chicago?
Well, I'm from here originally, and I grew up like in the north suburbs. And then I went to New York for a while, came back to Chicago. Then I went out to the Bay Area and I was in Berkeley for a while. And now I've been back for about 6 years.
Love it and love the Midwest.
Yeah, I just, my family is here. I'm always coming back
I
to
know.
the fam. So, but it's a good
Yeah,
place to be for sure.
great. Well, today we're going to talk about inclusion and body affirmation and safety in our yoga spaces, as well as safety within our own body, mind, soul. So I don't know where you want to begin. Do you have a natural place that you like to start?
So, before I actually get into the yoga piece, I realized there's some context that I think is important for people to understand. So I'm going to start with the context, which is that I have always been a big person. I'm 6'1", and I've always just been, in plus sizes since I was like in probably fifth grade or so. And now I identify as fat. I use that word to describe myself, and I use it in a neutral way. So just like we would say tall, thin, short, fat, right? And I'm fine with it, but it's taken me a long time to get here. I started going to weight loss camp when I was 14, and I spent 5 summers between the ages of 14 and 22 going to camps. One in particular that I went to several times. There's actually a podcast out about it now that just came out, which has been really interesting to kind of to listen to that and revisit my time there. But, from my teen years through all of my 20s, I was really focused on trying to be thin. That was like my main pursuit, right? Around 30, 31, I started to get just like really tired. And I decided that I was not going to diet anymore. And that's kind of how I thought of it, right? I thought of myself as being like disordered eating, dieting a lot, and just constantly trying to lose weight. And then my 30s were really spent kind of recovering my relationship with food, my relationship with movement, my body. And then 2 years ago, so that was like, 10 years, 2 years ago at 40, I saw a psychiatrist for the first time, and she diagnosed me as being in recovery from anorexia. So,
Wow.
yeah, that just like shocked me because I had never thought of myself as actually having an eating disorder. But, when she explained to me why she saw it that way, it made sense. And nobody in my life was ever worried about me because I was just doing what I was expected to do, right? I was a fat person. Fat people are expected to try to lose weight by any means necessary, really, right? And even when I was like at my thinnest, right, doing 10-day fasts, my cholesterol so low that it wasn't registering on my blood tests, I was still considered obese by BMI, by the BMI chart. So that's the context, right?
Mm.
That's kind of what is happening in the background throughout my yoga journey as well.
There's 2 points that I'm just so curious about. Number one, was she saying that your whole life, basically since fifth grade, you had been anorexic? Your behaviors were anorexic?
Starting from when I went to camp, which was when I was 14.
14. Okay.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to think of
Yeah.
it that way, you know?
Yeah. I like looked back at everything, right? And was like, just seeing things differently.
And anorexia can be like a form of self-harm, can't it?
Yeah, it's extreme restriction and it's extreme like value tied to the size of your body and how that also impacts like the rest of your life, your health, and all of that. So it's an illness.
Yeah.
And it looks really different from person to person, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I wasn't in the hospital. You can't really compare. You just go by the diagnostic, requirements.
So then the second question I have, and I want to just give complete permission to say pass at any time.
Sure.
I think that when you say I've decided to adopt saying that I'm fat, I think a
Hmm.
lot of people feel like, oh, don't say that about yourself,
Right.
which in itself is a judgment, right?
Uh-huh.
You're saying it's a descriptor,
Right.
and they're saying the word fat is a bad thing. Don't
Yeah.
judge yourself. Don't say mean things about yourself. So, can you just talk a little bit about that? Because
Oh,
I think a
yeah.
lot of people probably would be shocked to have someone say, I'm fat,
Yeah. Totally.
but not, I'm tall.
Right. I know. Right. Exactly. We as a culture have put the meaning onto it. Right.
Right.
And, you can compare it to the use of the word queer, really.
Mm,
Right. Queer was a derogatory term, and the LGBTQ community reclaimed that word.
yeah.
Right. And that is
Celebrate.
also what my community is doing as well. And it's anti fat bias, right? Which is the mistreatment of people in larger bodies, an oppression that affects everybody, no matter what size you are, right? Like
Mm,
everybody suffers from the way fat people are perceived, the way that fat bodies are evaluated and seen, the way we talk about health, all of this stuff is, I love talking about it. And it's like, there's so much to say to kind of get into all the nitty gritty of it. Yeah. I mean, certainly fat was a horrible word to me. People called me fat and I thought that it meant that I was horrible. And people use fat as an insult to kids who aren't fat. It means something, right? The meanings that are associated with fat are like lazy, stupid, no willpower. It's just not true. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I guess a little bit. Yeah.
Thank you for talking about that. Some of this feels a little uncomfortable, and I just want to give you permission to either name the uncomfortableness or to just say, yeah, that's not something I need to talk about, or let's move on.
Oh, Amy, I'm not uncomfortable at all.
Okay, good.
I've talked about this a lot and I've been talking about it
Great.
for over 10 years. So
Fantastic.
yeah, it's in my wheelhouse.
Yeah, and it's something, I can't take any more people for the rest of the year on the podcast because we're so full. But when you contacted me, I was like, yes, this is what the world needs to hear.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful to you.
Thank you. I'm grateful to you.
Hmm.
I'm really excited to be talking to you. And I want to shout out to, I guess I'll take this opportunity to shout out. And there was an organization that I found when I was 30, 31, and decided that I needed to quit dieting. I was like, I need other people, right? Because I knew I couldn't just do it by myself. And there was nobody in my life who would understand, right? Like,
Yeah.
how could you not try to be thin? Like, I would just complain with my friends about what I'd eaten, complaining about our bodies, right? All of this is just like how we all related to each other. So thankfully, luckily, I found this organization called the Body Positive, and they teach people about the fat acceptance movement. They teach people about health at every size, which is simply an approach to health, doesn't take weight into consideration, that helps people focus on health regardless of their weight, basically. So many of us go to the doctor for lots of issues and they're like, oh, you need to lose weight. You need to lose weight, right? But no, we all deserve access to care. So anyway, I learned a lot from this organization called The Body Positive, and I'm still very close with them today. And yeah.
Great. So, how did yoga play into all of this?
Yeah. Right. So I started practicing yoga in high school. My high school acting teacher offered it as like, he just taught us sun salutations as like a warm up for our acting classes and rehearsals and stuff. I was always flexible as a kid. That was the one space where I felt like, oh, I can do this, right? Like
Yeah.
I couldn't run the mile, but I could touch way past my toes. I loved sun salutations. I just thought they felt so good. And that inspired me to seek out yoga. When I started my yoga journey, my ego was very involved, right? I was like, oh, this is a place where I can like really shine, right? I'm going to go to these classes and I'm going to prove to people that I'm not what they think. I'm
Wow.
going to go in and show them that I'm like stronger than them. I'm more flexible than them. So I would like go into these classes and like look around. First of all, of course, always assessing like, am I the biggest person here? Almost always, yes. And then just like, is anybody kind of sizing me up, right? Because these are the people I'm going to prove wrong.
Going to, going to war, got to figure out who else is in the room.
Oh, yeah. Of course, I loved how it felt, but I would often push myself way too hard, right? In the name of proving myself and not wanting to be what people thought. So, I was practicing this way, mostly like vinyasa style, because that's what was around, it still is, but this was, the late 90s I started. I had pain in my legs, in my lower outer legs, that was like an exercise induced pain that started when I was at these camps, right? And I would just be same thing there, right? Pushing myself past pain, discomfort, exhaustion, all of that. And it would get exacerbated with yoga, with all of the standing postures and the warriors and the downward dogs and all of that. So I basically started to go through these cycles of going to classes, continuing to push myself as far as I could, and then having to like take a few months off of yoga because my legs were so sore, right? And then they would feel better, and then I would go back to the practice, and that cycle would repeat itself. I ended up then finding the Shivananda style, which is very light on standing, but is still like a vigorous sequence, right? It's a set sequence. And that was great for me. And I did my teacher training with them, and I was able to practice and not be in pain. But the pain kind of still evolved and developed. And, there's a lot of stuff in the middle here that we'll just kind of gloss over for time's sake. But I got to a point where basically I thought I could no longer practice yoga because of the pain. I guess I'll say I decided that I couldn't because of the pain. I mean, I could, right? You can. I just couldn't practice the way that I wanted to.
Right.
It didn't feel how I wanted it to feel. So I stopped practicing for about 3 years. And this was also during the time, right, in my 30s where I was recovering. So I had quit dieting and I was gaining weight. Okay. So my body was changing a lot. I was having all of this pain. During those 3 years of not practicing, things just got worse. I mean, my mobility started to really suffer. I was like not feeling good. It was rough. And I got to a point where I was like, I need to either like just accept that I'm probably going to be disabled, sooner or later. And just kind of, I'm going downwards in mobility. I'm 35 and this is just how it's going to be. Or I need to try to get back into yoga because yoga has helped me before. And if anything can help me, I think yoga is probably it.
Can I ask a minute? Did you at that time know that there's so many other forms of yoga you might be able to try? Maybe even more gentle form?
Yeah, I think I was just very like, I don't know. I think I was kind of stubborn, or like I had this belief that this was the kind that would give me the type of result that I wanted.
Anyway, I was just curious.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a good question. Yeah, I think I was just kind of stubborn about it. There was a lot of five koshas going on at that time. So I started to practice with like a Shivananda recording, and it was like very sad. It was like so hard. I was having to face something that I had been avoiding for 3 years, right? Like getting on the mat, like the first month or more, I would just lay on the mat and cry because I was facing the changes in my body head on. Right. And it was overwhelming, but I continued. And I realized that if I wanted to keep showing up, I would need to make some agreements with myself
Mm.
in order to not, be completely overwhelmed and give up. Right. So there were two agreements. The first was I was only allowed to do a posture if I really wanted to, and I had to say no if I didn't want to do it.
Wow.
And the other one was that I would be on the lookout for judgments and try to replace them with something different.
I'd like to take just a moment away from the episode to tell you about something that's really precious to us here at the Optimal State, and that's our Monday night Sangha. There are so many of us that have come together for several years now on Monday nights. It's about an hour and a half class where we really set ourselves up for the week. We start with talking about one of the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali's as it pertains to our topic of the month. So in November, that is kind of reflecting on 2025 and thinking about how to go inward for November and December and really settle ourselves before we move into the new year. So we'll choose Yoga Sutra that are all about reflecting, all about going inward. And then possibly towards the end of the month, talk about setting intentions with powerful manifestation and how do we have a great 2026. So that's our topic for November. We do a little discussion, we do some postures, some breath work, a little bit of yoga nidra meditation, and then we come back at the end for another discussion. These are really potent sessions to start your week off right. We invite all of you. You can be there live or watch the recording, but we would love to have you with us on Monday nights, especially as we move into 2026. All right, everybody, let's get back to the podcast, and thank you for listening.
So
Wow.
there were lots of judgments, and the replacement affirmations were basically things like, I'm giving myself exactly what I need right now. I'm doing like a beautiful act of self-care right now, right? Replacing things like, oh my God, I'm so tight. I'm so this, I'm so that. Things like saying, replacing that with like, this sensation is what it feels like to be healing.
That seems like a small perceptual change, but I think the neuroscience to show what's actually happening in your nervous system when you make a thought replacement like that while moving, while feeling, while breathing, it's sending a whole new cascade of signals up the spinal cord to the brain. Like
Totally.
it's different than the yoga where I'm pushing, I got to get into this form and I'm going to beat the rest of the people in the room. They're going to be so surprised that I can do wheel pose. Like that cascade of signals all going up is a very different message to your body and your brain
Totally.
than this new way that you've been doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. It made it this loving experience. It became, right, this time of just like connecting with myself and listening to myself and understanding just that little like asking myself, do I want to do this? And then whatever the answer was, good, was okay. And what's interesting too about that is that fast forward a little bit to a few years ago, I took my first like trauma informed class because I did a trauma informed training. This was, I think, before I was also diagnosed as being in recovery from anorexia. So I didn't really even consider myself traumatized somehow. But I found that class so incredibly liberating and freeing. I mean, it was so emotional for me. I feel like, wow, I'm with other people and I feel like whatever I do is like great, like.
When you're speaking and asking yourself, do I want to do this next posture? Will this feel good and supportive? It's almost like each moment of the practice, you are giving consent to move again, to have a choice, which is
Yeah,
very trauma informed.
Yeah, so it worked, we'll say. And that was about 6 years ago. And since then, I became a yoga therapist and, I'm now helping other people to kind of move and have a different relationship with their body and with yoga. So, yeah, it's been a big evolution that I'm very grateful for.
As you were speaking, I was thinking, wow, you can help other people in this same situation where they don't know what to do next. That now they have you as a guide. And I know you even have a community. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I think that idea of a community coming together and you teaching others how to recover body autonomy and pleasant sensation in your body, like, I just think that sounds like a very powerful community.
Yeah, it's a small one too, just an online membership that I do called the Sanctuary. And we have relationships. We always kind of connect at the beginning of classes. I teach 2 classes a week with them. So we always kind of check in. And everyone who's in the membership has also done a course with me. So, like, I got to know them in the course. Sometimes they got to know each other. It feels very safe, because everybody knows each other. And the women who are there now have been there for years at this point and just starting to think about opening it up. But they all have gotten to this place where they're like, I just love seeing them do different things. I mean, I had one person in the group who got a diagnosis, a health diagnosis, and had to really just come and lay down for like months. She would just show up and lie down and be with us. And then she got to a point where she could start moving again, and just really thinking differently about what it means to show up to a yoga class, and feel safe and autonomous. Yeah, it's beautiful.
So, if you were to describe the elements in your community that make it inclusive and affirming and safe, what are the elements that you try to make sure happens in that space on Zoom?
Yeah, well, options are always a big piece, and always kind of reminding people that they're the experts of their body. They're the only one who knows what it feels like to be in their body. I'm here as a guide to offer suggestions, but they know that they're always free to do what they want to when they want to. I have one member who always wants to do legs up the wall, so much so that we put legs as her middle name on her Zoom name.
I love that.
She'll always request it. And sometimes I don't get to it fast enough. So she's there. She puts herself up the wall. We also meet once a month for yamas and niyamas discussions, which is another great place where we can get to know each other better and like talk about our lives. And it's interesting because I was working full time for a year and a half. And so I wasn't putting energy into like keeping things moving. So I just had the same group. And now I'm starting to think about wanting to bring more people in. So the people that I have now have been with me for so long that I'm like, oh, they know the drill. It's challenging to kind of remember, how we set things up.
It's beautiful, though. I find when you have people that are there with you and get it, they're holding the space for the newcomers also. It's not just you
Yeah.
holding the whole community. Now you've got almost like co-leaders together that are welcoming in the new people.
Yeah, I think it'll be like that for sure. Yeah. Thanks.
So I'm just kind of tracking this, hearing this. It sounds so welcoming that you can come, you can do shavasana, you can do legs up the wall, you can choose to do things, not to do things, which is so different than a lot of yoga studios. I know we have a lot of wonderful trauma informed and sensitive yoga studios out there now, but I'm a yoga baby of the 90s where like, woo, there was a lot of trauma caused in yoga studios in the 90s, I think. And I just think about the damaging messages that we all got,
Yeah.
how do you resist those? Or do you just stay away from them altogether?
Before I answer that question, if I may, as you were talking, I thought about the community, that I have that just so happens to be all women in bigger bodies. And
Mm,
this is related, I think. I started yoga so young and before Instagram and everything, of course, right? So I didn't think that like yoga is not for me. That thought didn't enter my mind. But I know that these days, a lot of people think that, right? A lot of people see images that are put out there of people doing yoga and they don't look anything like that person for a variety of reasons. And so they think, okay, this is not for me. And certainly, like being in a bigger body or being fat, a lot of postures that are taught may not be offered with kind of offerings or the adaptations or whatever, however you want to kind of think about it, that would make it accessible for a different type of body, right?
Yeah.
So even just being in a space with other people who look like you is like, oh, I mean, I've had a lot of people say, like, oh, like when I saw you on Instagram, I was like, oh my God, I guess I can do this too, right?
Yeah.
And just the comfort of being seen when what you're seeing reflects you. But in terms of the messages, most people, I would venture to say, in the yoga community benefit from thin privilege, which means that they've never had to consider what it feels like, to walk into a space and not be thin, right? Through no fault of their own. But they've also never thought about, like, oh, I guess a person with a big belly would not be able to do this motion or
Right.
whatever, right?
Yeah.
And also when it comes to like the messages that you were suggesting, like talking about bodies and the way that we do, like as a culture, I feel like it's so easy to find yourself in a class where a teacher will just make a little side comment or a little joke that suggests that we are all trying to lose weight, that we are all wanting to be thin, right? That's just how people talk in a lot of places. And that's really not welcoming for people in bigger bodies. And it's also really damaging for people who may have an eating disorder, right? Because this type of language just perpetuates those behaviors, right? So what do I do? Yeah, I definitely try to, to avoid it at all costs, but you can't always know. And so for me, community is very important. That includes the people that I have in my life, but also providers. And I think when you're in recovery, especially in a bigger body, there's just constant messages out there. I mean, especially now with GLP-1s and like everybody is on that wagon, right? And we need people on our team who can kind of help us stay the course of long-term recovery and peace, right? So dietitian, therapists, psychiatrists, doctors who are all there to kind of reel me back in if I start kind of falling out of recovery.
And
And
when you say falling out of recovery, recovering from anorexia, so you're meaning to go back to that treadmill where you're maybe thinking, I have to change myself again.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, even with GLP-1s, right? I'll say another little bit of my story that I think is really relevant here. During the pandemic, I was doing my yoga therapy certification and I was learning more about Ayurveda and I started working with an Ayurvedic practitioner and I did panchakarma
Mm.
and I lost a lot of weight. I
Oh,
wasn't trying to. I wasn't doing it because I wanted to lose weight. I was doing it for other reasons, but I ended up losing a lot of weight, which was very triggering for me. I really liked it, right?
oh.
And it was too much too. It was like freaky to me, but I ended up gaining it back and more. And so then I had to go through that whole process, right? Again, that process of like thinking things were going to be one way and then they ended up being another way. And I have to get used to these limitations again and the changes. And it's exhausting and it's painful. And so when I think about GLP-1s, I'm like, what are the odds that that's not going to happen again? Very,
Right.
very low.
Very, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot to consider when you're thinking about recovering, especially anybody with an eating disorder. It's a horrible, horrible disease and illness. And recovering into a bigger body is a whole different game than recovering into a thin body or a straight sized body.
Yeah. So honestly, I almost feel like I'm going into freeze just listening. What you're saying is so contrary to what our society tells us
Yeah.
that my brain almost can't process. You know what I'm saying? Like it's really interesting to talk about this. I don't know, maybe it's a personal thing for me, but like I have to breathe and feel and pull myself back into my body right now.
I've come to understand that like what I need for health, for true health, is to resist any messages that tell me that like somebody else knows better about me than I do. They
Yeah.
don't. I consider people's perspectives if I have reason to.
Oh, I love that you're finding your way through this because it's your life and your mind and your spirit and your soul.
Yeah.
And if yoga isn't here to take us back to ourselves, what are we doing?
Right.
Yeah. I'm just reminded of the first yama, ahimsa, this nonviolence,
Mm,
nonviolence towards others, obviously, but nonviolence towards ourselves.
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I thought about that as I was writing out kind of my thoughts for our conversation, with like that whole experience of, I'm not allowed to do something that I don't want to do, right? That was my rule for myself when I got back on the mat. It's like, okay, you think about that's not very tapas like of me, right? I'm supposed to like push
Mm,
myself out of my comfort zone, blah, blah, blah. But actually, that was pushing myself out of my comfort zone in that moment, right?
yeah.
And also, ahimsa, we were just back to basics there. I had to really establish that love and reverse so much damage and harm that had been done. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what advice would you give anyone who's listening right now, especially those who are in larger bodies that are wanting to kind of return home to self, but maybe don't know even what the first step is to go in that direction?
Well, I think that we're at a point now where there are a lot of yoga teachers, who became yoga teachers because they didn't see yoga teachers who looked like them, right? And
Yeah.
they wanted to be that for somebody else. So, no matter what your identity is, there are people out there who will understand your experience and you can feel safe around. So, I would see what you can find in terms of, a guide who can, be gentle with you and give you your space to start to explore. And also, as somebody, I worked for a year and a half at like a PHP IOP treatment center, and for some people, they really need more support, right? We can't just like, I wouldn't recommend that just anybody lay on your mat and cry, for months by yourself. I had experience. I kind of felt like I was okay with that, but getting support to kind of work through this stuff can be really powerful, whether that's with like a somatic therapist or a yoga therapist, or even just talking about your thoughts and your feelings with somebody.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the offerings that you have as a yoga therapist, both individual one-on-one, but also you said you have some courses and then
Yes.
community. So you've got multiple steps here on this journey.
Yes. So the sanctuary is the community that people can join if they've already done a course with me or if they have worked with me one on one. And I have two courses coming up in October. One of them is an 8-week sort of introductory, gentle yoga course called Befriending the Body. So
Mm,
that would be really for anybody who is, interested in either getting back to yoga or starting yoga for the first time and want just a little bit more of that sort of, safe online community. We'll be meeting once a week with some time to kind of reflect and share with each other and also practice. And then I'm also going to be offering a yoga nidra course for
nice.
6 weeks in October as well. So those are the two things that I have coming up. That stuff will be on my website, which
Yeah.
is naomifinkelstein.com.
And I can put that in the show notes.
Yeah. And I'm also just getting back into participating on Instagram again after a little hiatus. So you can find me there at well_rounded.wellness.
I'm going to write that down. Underscore
It's well_rounded.wellness.
on Instagram.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you for talking with us today. Honestly, this is not what I thought we were going to talk about. I really thought we were going to talk more about kind of yoga spaces and how non-inclusive they've been. Like, I really thought we were going to put it out there. And
Yeah.
what you did was bring it in here. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been talking about my story for a long time, and always find it so connecting when I do, and that's what we need. We need community. We need to hear our stories reflected so that we can also kind of discover our own and start to heal. So
Yeah.
it's always a gift when I have an opportunity to share.
And know that there's a way forward and there's a guide
Yeah.
alone.
Yeah. Everybody deserves to, feel proud of who they are right now. They deserve to be loved. They deserve to love themselves. We don't need to change anything to deserve that. And anybody who says otherwise is not our friend.
I love that.
They're misguided.
Oh, thank you, Naomi. We're going to end it on that note. Just know you're not our friend. Goodbye. Ah,
Thank you.
thank you. We'll talk soon. Thank you, Naomi, for being on the podcast today and for bringing your whole self, your vulnerable self, your honest self. I think to show up this authentically and speak your truth, what is sometimes a truth that is against societal norms, it's so brave. And I, for one, am not as brave as you. I haven't gotten there. I'm going to completely admit it that I'm not brave enough to say the things you've said today, even though ultimately I agree with them. So I don't know how to wrap this up other than to say at the end, I laughed really hard that we could just tell people we don't want to be their friends. I don't know why that struck me as funny, but I think we're all going to have to go back and listen to this once or twice because it's a deep conversation. And so many of us have body image issues. And it's probably going to be a lifelong journey for most of us, I would imagine. So thank you, Naomi, for stimulating thought, provoking discussion, and we will all be taking a little time to digest. All right, everyone, have a great week. Thank you to our listeners at the Yoga Therapy Hour for listening each week and also sending emails of thanks and gratitude and letting us know how the Yoga Therapy Hour has changed your life. Every time we receive one of those, we think, okay, we're going to keep going. This is hard work, but we got this. We're making a difference in the world in our own unique way. So thank you again for listening. We are so grateful for all of you, our listeners. Thank you for listening to the Yoga Therapy Hour. We wish you a wonderful week. We hope that somehow, in a small way, we've contributed to your well-being so that you can go out and share that well-being with others. That's what life is all about, bringing in the goodness through you and then shining it out to the world. We need you more than ever. So let's all get out there, do good, be good, and have a great week.